So two of the main problems most entrepreneurs face, and I think especially during these early stages, is not having enough clients or not enough profit left at the end of the month. And a lot of the founders I've worked with, and myself included, I'll talk you through a little bit of my experience shortly, is that you try and fix these problems by reducing prices, which again affects your profitability with very little increase in client, or you increase your marketing spend, but when you're not ready, it actually is frustrating because then you still have the same problem. It affects your profitability with very little increase in clients. So how can you unblock your growth? Little bit about me. So I'm Jyoti Patel, business psychologist and exited entrepreneur, and I've walked the path you have as well, and I'm here to share my learnings. And I started my business from zero to multi-million pounds over a course of a decade. My journey started in the corporate world, where I helped clients, merge, help them save hundreds of millions in carving and merging businesses. But something was missing, and then I left to then build my own venture and scaling it to 8-figure revenue, raising over 20 million and creating 50 plus jobs. Became the #1 the biggest world food platform in the UK. And since exiting, which was a couple of years ago, I now help founders like yourselves to grow and scale your businesses. My unique approach blends psychology and proven business strategies. So it's a mixture of both strategies, and you would be surprised, but 80% is not strategy in terms of success. It's 80% is psychology and 20% about having the right strategy to grow your company. And I've used these in my own principles in my own venture, as well as help countless clients achieve breakthrough in theirs. And that's how I either coach them or I help them in a fractional CMO capacity with growth partners. So how do you grow? How do you break that conundrum? And nothing is going to work unless you have the 4 basics covered, the 4 basic truths covered, which is having the right product, market, prices, and offer. So in terms of product, you've tried everything and you're still not growing. You've pulled every lever, or you've tried all types of traction channels, from PPC to influencer marketing to PR, and yet you're not seeing the growth momentum that you would love to see. And the problem is usually at the very early beginning stages of the product concept stage, which is where I've kind of had to take founders back right through. And what's actually happened is that most common issue is that they've gone and built a product fast without validation, and they've expected sales to come as soon as they've launched. And then unfortunately, it was crickets when they launched. So these are some of the core lessons I've learned, and I'll give you examples of what I've kind of helped clients through in a very quick nutshell, because I've got quite a few slides to go through. But basically, problem. Have you validated your problem? You may be tackling a problem not worth solving. Is it a painkiller or a vitamin? You may have heard that before. If it's vitamin, you're solving, it's a nice to have. People probably want to take vitamins to keep healthy, their body's healthy, but it's not a painkiller solution, which is why that urgency to kind of go and buy your product might not necessarily be there. So if you've validated your problem, have you validated the demand? You might say, yes, this problem is worth solving and everyone's experiencing this problem, but is it worth solving? And sometimes not all problems are worth solving, because enough easy alternatives actually exist in the market. And that's probably why there's a bit more of an uphill struggle for people to come and use your solution, because there's an easy, cheap alternative already out there, which could be using spreadsheets or paper, stick, stones, whatever it is. So make sure you validate the demand of your product. And finally, the solution. You may be approaching the right problem, but with the wrong solution. So I would use these as this key checklist, making sure you go through a whole process of validating each part of this to make sure you actually have the right product to sell to the right people and with the right solution. An example of this was a fintech client that I had. And again, they were selling financial services to corporates, built a product, but unfortunately sales, everything was very slow, and they were finding it a huge, long sales cycle, huge problem. And then I took them right back to the very beginning, took them through these stages in terms of making sure we did, conducted customer discoveries, we did smoke tests, we created MVP before actually rebuilding the product and relaunching. And then once we did that, they saw a huge rapid increase in sales from, literally going to 1 million in sales within 12 months. So product, market, The importance of selling your product to the right market. So how do you find your market? So you look for purchasing power. Your audience needs to be able to afford your service at the prices you require to make it worth your time. Market must be easy to target. When I say easy to target, consider the sales cycles, number of touch points, especially in B2B, if that's the type of product you have. Who holds the purse strings, the number of layers it takes, etc., because that also determines how fast and far you can grow. You need to find a market that's growing. When a market grows, you will grow with it, and if it's shrinking, you will also shrink with it. So I think it's very important to make sure you understand the trends. I actually had a founder who was building a disability product for people with hand agility, and though they were selling well, all of a sudden overnight they stopped selling, and that's because there was a charity who actually built out and was giving away free products, and so that kind of they had to then go back and rebuild their business. But always being careful, like it's a growing market, and what are the trends in the market, so you have good survivability. And niching down, you've probably heard this a lot, and I think the biggest misconception founders have is that, oh, my market won't be big enough if I do not niche. But it's absolutely critical, especially at your early stage, to niche down. If you sell to everybody, you sell to nobody. And I think it's just really important to make sure, especially when you're going to start spending on marketing, you have a segment of the market that you can target easily and cheaply. So simply put, niche down, it'll make your money, which will help you make your money, and product be more unique. And once you find your niche, I think another issue I find is that you have to commit to it. Many people make the mistake of jumping from one niche to another, thinking the problem is the niche, whereas the problem is actually the offer. And changing niche is also quite costly, because you have to then go back and change all of your material and change the way you've developed your whole communication and product as well. So yeah, and this is the example again with one of my luxury travel clients. They were selling luxury travel holidays, but it was literally to everyone because they had very poorly defined ICPs, ICP meaning ideal customer personas. And they weren't validated, and no special niche in terms of particular destination. And also they were attracting clients who couldn't actually afford luxury holidays. So they got into, discounting products, which they really shouldn't have, which really didn't make sense for their business model. So we went back to the basics, created a differentiated product, clearly defined and validated ICPs. And when I say validated, I think at the early stage, you're only guessing who your customer is. But you have to be able to then validate that as soon as you start selling, and you will only get that validation, but then you have to make sure you're also attracting the right tribe. As they say, your vibe attracts your tribe. So you need to make sure that the messages you also do put out there is helping you validate your ICP. And that's what we did. We then ended up reworking the marketing communications, relaunched, and resulted in at least, I think 25-26% month-on-month increase. So make sure you choose the right market that has the 4 key elements I've just gone through. The market you choose must have a pain, must have purchasing power, easy to target, and must be growing. And don't focus on the entire market, focus on the niche to begin with. Price. This is a very sensitive topic. And have you ever wondered why the same product is, cost different, or the same, like a very similar looking handbag, and it's got very different prices? But basically the way most people go about setting your price, and this is exactly what I did when I first started my business, was I copied my competitor pricing and just made it slightly cheaper. But you don't know why your competitor set that price, and whether it would actually work for your business model. So what you need to do is, instead you're competing on price rather than value. Avoid becoming commoditized, and to avoid being commoditized, you need to really differentiate yourself. And there's a four key formula that is how do you price on value, which is your goal or outcome. So the goal is in terms of the result the client wants to achieve, their dream outcome. The bigger the dream, the more valuable the offer. The achievement of probability, how likely is it that the client will be able to achieve their dream outcome, their goal, through your product? And then there's the time and effort. Time meaning how long will it take for the client to achieve the dream outcome. The shorter the time, the more valuable the offer. And the same goes for effort. The shorter, the easier it is, and the less effort, the more valuable the offer. So essentially, you want to kind of pull on these levers to make sure that the dream outcome or the goal and the achievement for achieving those goals through your product or service is increased, but the time and effort is reduced, which is essentially a sales friction. And that this will kind of help you not be too commoditized and really help you kind of charge the prices you want as well. So an example is with an online course provider I helped. It's actually a very competitive landscape now selling courses online. They were selling marketing course online, which was quite overcrowded. And we pulled on these levers going through one by one and truly then differentiated, niched down. So some principles from earlier slides to create a truly differentiated product created on a sub-segment of marketing, changed the delivery method, and they were then able to kind of charge more, but also become known as the expert in their field. And then finally, your offer. So the better your offer, the easier it will be to sell and the more successful your business will become. And I think you need an offer for each part of your funnel or journey. So imagine your product or service being the main course. You almost need to leave a trail of, starters and side, bits that people can chew on to get to the main course, and then you can sell it. So have an offer for each part of your funnel and your journey. So this could be lead generation documents, freebies, could be webinars, it could be and even if you're able to get clients to pay a little bit before they pay a lot, so get them to pay maybe, for a workshop or a proof of concept if you're a B2B, or something that then already makes them feel comfortable spending with you, and then that next step of spending a little bit more is a lot easier to take because there's trust established, they're happy with the delivery. So very important to do that. Having product market fit. Again, this is a very, very popular topic about how you achieve product market fit. But essentially, the very first slide of talking about making sure you have a problem worth solving to the right consumer, and it's validated, is essentially how you go about doing your product market fit. So make sure you have your basic product concept sorted and validated before you think about how to then how you can actually improve your product market fit. And an easier way to think about this, especially when you craft the sales message and when you craft the offer, is you've identified the customer pain points, turn them in, and then you've identified the solutions to fix them. So your messaging should be about turning those problems into solutions. And then you use the sales tactics, whether, to reduce the sales friction. You can offer freemiums, which is very popular in SaaS, or free trial periods, guarantees, buy money back guarantees, whatever it is to kind of reduce the anxiety around buying for the consumer's mindset. And introducing tactics like scarcity, urgency. I'll give you an example of that in a minute. And then test and refine, test and refine. Absolutely key. An example is one of the retreat companies, again, that I was working with. They were trying to fill out their upmarket yoga and sound healing retreat in Ibiza. But what they found was coming closer to the time, they had a lot of cancellations. And they weren't actually able to make it work profitable based on the numbers. So we kind of introduced some of these concepts, especially in terms of the urgency, scarcity, to make sure that worked. But also I've got there at the bottom, perception is reality. And I think that's a really important key takeaway. Before you go and think that the problem is with your product, and then you spend millions and millions. And I think there's that famous example of Royal Mail where basically they spent millions to improve their delivery efficiency by probably 2 or 3%. But the issue is actually perception, because people, when they surveyed their customers thought that their Royal Mail only delivered maybe 40 or 50% mail on time. In actual fact, Royal Mail was already delivering at like the 95, 96%, and they still spent millions to improve it. So the issue there was actually perception, where they could have actually spent that money on improving the perception of their customers to say, actually, we are really good. They just didn't know it. So perception is reality, and how you kind of really able to control that. It's like, instead of making your elevator go faster, add a mirror, Or instead of making your train go faster, add Wi-Fi. Like, what can you do to make the journey more pleasant as well? So don't always keep thinking, I need to go back and improve my product features and make this better, make this faster, make this cheaper. It's not always the answer. And so these are kind of some of the 4 core issues that I've unraveled with clients who have been really trying to scale and grow, because they're like, oh, we've got the product and now we just need to go and we need to scale, and and how do we do this? And sometimes the question that you should be asking is not how do you scale, but who. They ask who, not how. And there's a really good book by Dan Sullivan out there who talks about this. And when you are ready to scale, and you're kind of going through all of this, is you need to kind of hire the right people with growth mindsets and skill sets. And especially from my own journey, I was really stuck in this hiring, firing loop all the time. I spent 6-7 months recruiting someone. Then 6-7 months, they had the 6-month trial period, and then I ended up, they ended up not performing. So I almost spent a whole year realizing that somebody couldn't deliver. So it was a very, so I think it's very important that you kind of build a strong team made of internal and external people to leverage their expertise, because you want to really free yourself up to work on the business rather than in the business. And then I think to get to scale, how do you scale? How do you grow faster? Is essentially it's a teamwork. Business is a team sport, so you need to have the right people on your side to be able to really help you grow. And like I said, it's very expensive to then find out you've hired the wrong people. So build a strong team. Delegate tasks and responsibilities that other capable individuals can handle. Focus on your core strengths and outsource non-essential tasks, but also invest in automation and technology to streamline. I think nowadays actually is a lot easier from when I started my business, well over a decade ago, to actually start a business. You've got AI, you've got so many things to help you, so many apps to help you. I mean, Shopify, I don't think even existed when I started my online e-commerce business. So it's a lot easier. So really go have that learning curve. Also make sure you kind of understand all the tools and technologies, and then also make sure you have the right people to take you through some of these concepts I've just talked about, and building relationships and partnerships to expand your reach. Really important. So that's it from me. I'm just going to stop sharing if I can. There we are. Do we have any questions?
That was fabulous. Thanks, Jyoti. Any questions this morning? Let's have a look. Any questions from any any of our community? Morning, Martin.
Morning, Ollie. Hello.
That
was very, very good. Very interesting. Thank you very much.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah. I don't have a question. I mean, you seem to have covered it very, very well. I you did mention the consequences of making hiring errors. And of course, nobody would do that deliberately. It is difficult, but anything difficult is worth and important. Is worth putting some effort into.
Yes.
And I don't think there's any shortcuts. I mean, psychometrics are not a shortcut. It's pretty standard anyway. People use that and assume that it will work. And but it depends what you're looking for. If it's some specialist knowledge, then in some ways that's easier to check than if you're looking for, say, a marketing person or a salesperson, where ability, there's an innate ability you're looking for when you're trying to work out what that is. I'll tell you that I went through this process. I've run lots of agencies, advertising agencies, and I started when I started my first one. I've often got a top psychologist involved. I rang around and found who was considered to be just about the best in the UK, a chap called Joshua Fox, and we spent many years working on this, and we came up with something which was pretty reliable. Right. And I'll summarise. This isn't a question; it should be a question. I'm terribly sorry.
This is very insightful.
What it boiled down to was, people are complicated. Anything complicated, break it down into bits and puts the bits together at the end, and that kind of makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And you can break people down in lots of different ways, but let's make it simple. Motivation, style, ability. Those three things And style, you'll know that anyway, instantly. You don't need to think about that one, that's obvious. Ability, knowledge, skills, etc., testable. But make sure you know,
Yeah.
very careful. Actually, the one that people are really lousy at, and probably the most important of all, is values, is motivation.
Yeah.
Because we're all best at the things we enjoy, for a start, aren't we?
Yeah.
The problem is the interview process absolutely corrupts it. If you have somebody, call somebody in and you say, look, have a coffee. What I like to do is just run through the company first, give you a bit of a feel for what we're about, and then we can chat about you. You have screwed any chance of finding out what somebody's values are, because all they're going to do is reflect yours.
Yeah.
You can't give them a clue about what you're interested, what your values are. You have to ask very open questions in a, and it's not long enough here to go through it, but you ask very open questions to get people to describe what they enjoy, what they want to work at, which is another way of saying not very good at, and you know, where they're going, what they're looking for, that sort of stuff. Those, and you ask those questions before they know they have anything. Get them a coffee. That's it. No conversation. Find out what their values are, and the chances of you making a mistake plummets.
Well, so put it this way. So, you know, like I mentioned, I am a business psychologist. And before, I mean, I've been, you know, I used to work on designing assessment centers, etc. And then
Didn't know that.
actually going
Wow.
through, yeah. and I think I reached a very, I guess, my own personal conclusion when I was doing a lot of hiring, because I actually, you know, I found it easy to hire in certain roles, right? So roles where you can see a little bit more tangible experience, you know, if it's operations, warehouse management, etc. And there isn't any surefire way of making sure you've hired, no matter what tests you've done before the interview. You know, I had like a 4 or 5 stage interview where not only I interviewed, I got my chairman to interview them, I got them to do tests. You know, got them to spend some time with the team in the office for a day, all of that stuff. I was very, very thorough. But what in particular, I found hiring for marketing and sales roles was the most difficult. And the reason why is the personality type of people in marketing and selling are generally good at marketing and selling themselves, right? So because they're good at marketing and selling themselves, you know, there's a bigger gap between the perceived reality of what they say they can do versus what they actually can do. And I mean, I went through freelancers, I built an internal team, then I ended up, you know, having fractional experts, CMOs as well. And I think that, and I realized the biggest mistake when I made, and when I hired my, you know, very expensive internal chief marketing officer, he was brilliant, right skill set, passed all the interviews, knew how to grow a company, came from this, you know, huge, very well-known marketing company, or a brand, very well-known global brand. But the issue was in how he went about achieving his motivation or his goals in the company. And some of these things you don't know what and how they do. And it wasn't it wasn't the right environment for him, because he came from a corporate background full of resources and a way of achieving in the corporate background, as opposed to, you know, in maybe a bigger startup that he then joined. But I completely agree that it's unfortunately, it is sometimes a trial and error. And by no means, and what I say by this is that then if you know, especially if you're a startup, you don't have the time and money to make that mistake like I did. I literally tried 4 different models, and I was literally a year and a half in, and I was just like, okay, this is not working. And hence why it's kind of making sure, yes, you know, hire the right experts in terms of, first, exactly what you did in terms of hiring a psychologist, understanding you don't know your blind spot. So understanding where your blind spot is, understanding what type of help you need, kind of doing a discovery, understanding, okay, what actually do you need to do to make this business work? And then hiring within the expertise and the speciality skills within that. But hiring is, you know, one of the biggest challenges I've kind of helped founders through, because they've got a great product, they're ready to scale. And sometimes it's just making sure that they have the team. And, you know, like I said, it's your team that will help you grow your business, because you can't go and achieve multi-million-pound businesses without making sure everyone is operating at that level, really. So.
Yes, that's right. Yes, I mean the only thing that for people to be aware of and wary of is that big CVs can hide an inept character, or an inappropriate one as well. Be very, very wary about CVs. I don't think CVs are much use at all. I mean, find out what you have for yourself, not from. Don't be hoodwinked by a big CV, and thus think if you pay more, you're going to get better. I mean, that's not true, is it?
Definitely not. As we've probably both learned the hard way.
Well, thank you very much for that, Martin. I think you're being far too modest about the agency you run. Very exciting story, that. But let's go back to see if there's any more questions from the community. Phil.
Morning, Ollie. Good morning, Jyoti. I just wanted to unpack a bit the validation issue, and I suppose the question, do you have a product that solves a problem that's worth solving, and how you satisfactorily prove that to yourself to convince yourself to spend enough time on it? Because it strikes me, a lot of businesses fail because they almost convince themselves or hoodwink themselves that they have a solution to a problem that's worth solving. It's quite easy to persuade yourself that people need what you love, what is your baby, when in fact, as you were hinting at, most people get by without it. They find other solutions, or apathy is a good enough way of solving a problem. It will go away. So I guess, bringing your own experience of psychology, how do you not fall into the trap of convincing yourself that you've got a solution for a problem that's worth solving?
Yeah, and I mean, and that is, I think, one of the biggest challenges founders have. And it's kind of, I think the very, very early stages of that process is kind of really going through the customer discovery points. So yes, you can do all your market research, find out whether it's Reddit, or if you're going to sell a product, find out, read every reviews, try and find competitors who's selling similar products, find out the negative comments. So you've done all of that research, and then you've kind of arrived at a conclusion that, oh, there's already products on the market. And I think many gurus say, oh, if there's already a competitor resolving the problem you're about to resolve, that means there's a market and you should go do it. While that's true that there might be a market, that doesn't say much for innovation. That's usually my issue with that advice, that if that was the case, then probably half these companies like Airbnb and Uber probably wouldn't have existed. So I think, how do you satisfy yourself that the problem is worth solving is then actually taking that step beyond the market research. When you've done a thorough analysis of all the negative, positive comments, is then actually going to do customer discovery and actually putting yourself out there, and making sure that the cues that you're picking up from speaking to people is what you need to see. And again, when I've helped clients through this customer discovery, unfortunately is very biased, because they're asking questions that directly feed into validating the reason why they need to have this product. So I think there's a really, really important interview technique called the mums test, in terms of how you can go and actually ask these questions to make sure you actually then get unfiltered truth. Because if you ask a friend, hey, this is a good idea, they're probably going to say yes. but that's not the, you know, that's not how you want to go and ask it. So there's a really good way of kind of asking, structuring the questions. But then it's also then beyond the customer discovery, and that process actually has to be continuous throughout your business building journey, not just at the beginning. But what you will find, and what I found, was my customer ICP kept changing as well. So doing that customer discovery, making sure you're actually speaking to your customers on the phone all the time is absolutely important. And then also picking up the right cues. So how do you convince yourself? Coming back to how do you convince yourself? Once you've spoken to enough people, once you've then actually understood, you know, then you have to do some tests. You have to put some tests out there. To see what type of traffic you're generating, to see what type of engagement you're generating. So you have to kind of go through the whole test process. And I mean, you could spend ages during this concept stage. And I think you have to have a fine balance between just knowing when it's right, when you're seeing the right numbers as well and the right traffic to say, right, you know, if I spend this much on doing ads, driving traffic to a product that doesn't exist today, you know, doing smoke tests, is that going to be viable? And so you're kind of doing some tests. And then actually then it's actually going out and doing it. My only caveat is try not to build your product straight away. If you can create a minimum viable trial. So there's many people talk about a minimum viable product, but before creating an MVP, there's a stage before that called an MVT. And I would say create an MVT before you even spend money on creating an MVP. And then you kind of also do that. And again, this is still part of the testing, but it's just taking a stepping stone towards actually building the business that you want, but making sure you've got the right clues. But yeah, some of it is that, you know, you don't know until you know, but you have to go and do it. And you know, there's that saying that sharpen the idea in the market and not in your mind. So yes, you can continue sharpening your idea in the market, but until you've launched, you don't know as well. So have a mixture of both strategies.
Okay, thanks very much.
No,
Thanks, Phil. Great question. Any final questions for Jyoti this morning while she's with us? I think we've exhausted the questions. I'm just going to finish up by saying that was fantastic, really good. You're welcome back anytime, and it was great having you this morning. We're going to give you a lot of love and appreciation on LinkedIn today. Yeah, Hannah's apologising. She was having issues with her mic and camera, so apologies for that. But yeah, you was terrific. You're going to get a lot of big ups and love from us today, and you're welcome back anytime, Jyoti. That was truly awesome. Thank you.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you. Thank you for your time, everyone.